Guys, we are going to hear about realities that some of us maybe heard of, and some of us we might hear it for the first time. But I came with such a heaviness here on the stage, not because I am standing before you, but because there are 42% of the people of the world behind me who are still considered unreached people in the world today. Just before coming here, I was standing over there and I was crying, and I just prayed. I said, Lord, please help me stop crying. I was crying because I don't know what does it take for God to move our hearts and to send us out there. I remember years when I was, I spent most of my time in home just crying and begging God to send people, because I live in a place where we have 40,000 villages, 120 million people in a place that is like 25% of Norway's size. And for one person to go to each village one day, it will take about 110 years just to go one day in one village. There is an injustice out there that 2,000 years later, we still have people who don't know who Jesus is. Many of us, we heard Martin Luther King probably on YouTube, or if you are old enough, maybe you heard him speaking, in 1963 about a message that was called, I Have a Dream. But my question is, how many of us heard the message that God has a dream? And God has a dream that for 2,000 years has not been accomplished yet. And there is so much more out there for you and for me. There is so much more to be done to end up this injustice. I remember a day when I was flying from this nation towards another nation, and just next to me there was a highly, very educated family from the Middle East, and I started talking with them for a few minutes, and then all of a sudden we're talking about faith, and I'm telling them I'm a Christian, and he turns to me, he looks at me and says, "What's that?" And I didn't know how to take it. I was so shocked when a person doesn't even know what's Christianity. I remember people confusing Jesus with a fish, with a bread of fish, or saying about Jesus that he's a brand, a company. I remember talking with a lady that came from the West, and she came in that part of the world to find faith. And when I talked to her about Jesus, she was in her 30s, coming all the way from Canada. She told me, why nobody came up to this age to share the message you're sharing with me? Why did I have to leave my country to come in this part of the world to look for faith? And nobody had courage to come to me and tell me what's the reality. I remember talking with another young woman that came from all the way from Europe to the same part of the world. She changed her, official religion into another religion. And when I shared with her about Jesus, she said, and salvation, she said, "Is it that simple?" I said, "Yes, it's that simple." And yet she never heard it. There are people out there that are longing for people like us to go and share the good news. Out of 17,000 plus people groups, more than 7,000 of them are considered unreached people. There are almost 300 million people in the world that don't know Jesus. They don't know not the message, but they don't know the name. Dears, God has a dream. God has a dream, and you and I have to fulfill it. I see Jesus reacting in the Bible when he got angry with the people and says, what have you done with my father's house? What have you done with my father's dream? Den of thieves. What have you done with a place that was supposed to be a house of prayer, a house for all nations? What have you done with my father's dream? What are we doing 2,000 years later with the father's dream? I look in Revelation and I see the father's dream. In Revelation 5:9, it says every tribe, every language, every people, every nation, that's the dream. That's the dream that will come true one day. In Revelation 7 verse 9, he reminds us again about the same dream. How many of you are going after this meeting to give your life not just to follow Jesus in a sense of having faith in Jesus, but to follow Jesus in a sense of obeying what Jesus wants you to do? That's the question. We'll take it back home. We can sing, we can pray, but the reality will change only if we change. And once we go out from here, we'll go with radical decisions. But God is moving in the world. In Nepal, in 1950, there was only one secret believer. In 1950. In 2022, there are more than 1.3, some people are even saying 2 million believers. That's in our generation. In the whole continent of Africa, there are 9 million Christians in the beginning of the 20th century. Majority of them in Ethiopia or, Northern Africa. But now, there are 76 times more, almost 700 million people following Jesus. And it's real, and it's in our time. Friends, God has a dream. And the dream is not just about others. The dream, it's about you too. The dream includes you. So let's not be just satisfied to share stories about what our ancestors did, to share stories about what our parents did. Let us be part of the story and write it for the generations to come. Thank you.